What's happening, everybody? You have tuned into a very special edition of Popstar Plus today. It's our Oscars preview. Over the next hour, we're going to bring you everything you're going to need to know about this year's Academy Awards ceremony. We've got some great stuff. Interviews with nominees, including some of the categories that you might not know that much about. We spoke to some very talented artists who bring magic to the silver screen and are nominated in categories like cinematography, makeup design, production design, and costume design. A lot of great things to get to. Let's dive right in. First up, one of the nominees for Best Picture, Don't Look Up. This comedy explores what happens as a highly destructive comet approaches Earth. Our own Savannah Guthrie spoke with stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence and director Adam McKay.
So how certain is this?
There's 100% certainty of impact.
Please, don't say 100%.
Can we just call it a potentially significant event?
Yeah.
Yes.
A massive fireball speeding towards Earth, promising to obliterate the planet.
You guys discovered a comet?
Comedy isn't exactly what comes to mind, but the new film, Don't Look Up, from Oscar-winning writer and director Adam McKay, is counting on laughter to focus audiences on a deadly serious matter.
This is kind of the feel-good, feel-bad movie of the year. How did you pull that off?
It's a pretty good description. We made this movie during the pandemic, before there was even a vaccine, so I think we were all in the mood to laugh because things were so grim, but at the same time we needed to feel some other feelings as well.
Put the moment of impact on a diet app, so impact is when my diet ends.
Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence lead a star-studded cast as two astronomers trying to sound the alarm on the comet that will soon wipe out the world. A not-so-subtle allegory for a real threat, climate change.
After seeing the movie last night, something kind of resonated in me. It's how we process bad news and how it becomes a debate, how truth and facts can be distorted or politicized. This was originally, a metaphor for the climate crisis, and then COVID hit, and then a whole new wave of the denial of science. It was amazing to witness what was going on in real time as we were making this movie. I mean, we were sitting there trying to explain science as Fauci was doing the same thing. It was a bizarre experience.
You've said, Leo, you feel like it cracks the code. You also said yesterday, I think, that you were a little bit of a Debbie Downer on this issue. I mean, it's hard not to feel a little bit hopeless.
If you do a film about climate change, it's nearly impossible to get people to get a sense of urgency and hold a mirror to our culture and media and politics and all these things. And I just felt like this was an incredible gift to be a part of a movie that encapsulated exactly what we're going through at this particular moment in time. But yeah, I am a bit of a Debbie Downer because the clock is absolutely ticking.
How big is this thing, though? Like, can it destroy my ex-wife's house? Is that possible?
There's a 100% chance that we're all going to die!
Jennifer, your role is the first who gets to really just say, this is insanity. Did that just feel great?
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of unleashing that helplessness that I feel as a citizen and a human on the planet. It was also so poignant that all of the ire kind of landed squarely on her shoulders because she was saying something that people didn't want to hear.
During filming, before she was pregnant, Lawrence took her approach of getting into character to a new high.
Before the movie started, there was a lot more in the script. Kate DiBiase was high pretty much the whole time. We thought if there was a scene where I wasn't talking, it could be funny to actually just see that kind of just glassy stare.
There was one scene where she definitely was like, am I going to speak tonight? I was like, no, you're not. She's like, I'm going to try it because it does fit the character. And the whole night, I was so tempted to go on the mic and say, hey, let's improvise a monologue. And I realized how mean it would be, and I did not do it.
Thank you for not doing it.
Out of love and respect for Miss Lawrence.
Thank you for not,
Yeah.
It would have been just
oh my God.
Sobering.
Oh, I would have, yeah, sobering.
And she was next to Meryl Streep.
I was next to Meryl Streep.
What was it like to be with Meryl Streep? Because I know she's an idol of everyone's.
Her improvisation was incredible, too. You know, shooting this during COVID and having the mind of Adam McKay sort of speak through a loudspeaker And we were this sort of nerdy scientist just trying to react to this onslaught of different directions that the scenes would go at any given time, because he really created an atmosphere where anything goes. Not a lot of rehearsal, just get into the room and go at it. And of course, Meryl was incredible to work with.
There will be magnitude 10 or 11 earthquakes.
You're breathing weird. It's making me uncomfortable.
I'm just trying to articulate the science.
I know, but it's like so stressful.
I heard Jonah Hill ad-libbed a lot of those lines.
Oh, yeah.
There was one day that was just solely dedicated to him insulting me.
I'm sorry. Who is she?
Are you her son?
I'm the chief of staff boy with the dragon tattoo, so I'm doing fine.
And that was tough, but it was one of the greatest days of my life.
I heard you inhaled your nose ring a few times.
Yeah, the stud was a magnet, and poor Leo had to witness a couple times of me making eye contact with you while it got it out of my throat.
Yeah, it did happen a couple times, didn't it? And I never understood what the hell was going on.
You had the premiere. How did the ending go over? I'm not giving anything away, because you'll kill me.
I think it was incredibly emotional, and, you know, had this movie had a different ending, it wouldn't be the story that it is. And we're not going to give that away, but it needed to have this ending. It needed to, it's a wake-up call. It's an alarm clock. And,
it's not a Hollywood ending.
No, it's not. If it didn't have that ending, there was no way we were going to be a part of it.
It's remarkable how that film explores such a serious topic in such a funny way. All right, coming up next, another Best Picture nominee. Take a look at our interview with director Kenneth Branagh about his film Belfast, which is loosely based on his own childhood in Northern Ireland.
This morning, we are catching up with Oscar-nominated actor, writer, and director Kenneth Branagh. He showed us his military prowess, playing the title character in Henry V, and took on the iconic detective Hercule Poirot in Murder on the Orient Express.
Well, now Kenneth wrote, produced, and directed the Oscar-nominated film Belfast, loosely based on his time growing up in Northern Ireland.
Here's a look at the young protagonist, Buddy, talking about his feelings for a girl with his grandparents. Watch.
Anyways, I think she loves that other fella.
I don't know that for sure. Women are very mysterious.
And women can smash your face in two, mister.
Your granny's become less mysterious over the years. So, you really like her?
When I grow up, I want to marry her.
Yeah, sounds like you really like her.
Definitely not COVID safe.
I guess that's where all the best conversations are had, right? Yeah. So, Kenneth, it's awesome to have you here in the plaza, and I just want to bask in your aura.
I agree.
I mean, everything you touch is gold, whether you're directing it, producing it, in it. I mean, how do you take it all in, especially when this movie is loosely based on your life and people are obsessed with it?
Well, thank you. It's a bit overwhelming. It's a very beautiful moment to have, because it is based on a lot of experiences I had as a kid, including falling in love with movies that came from this country. Mm-hmm. So when you end up and you look at the film and you see a kid watching movies from Hollywood, and you end up here, you know, heading towards the Academy Awards with 7 nominations for a bunch of work from an amazing bunch of people. It's surreal. But the thing that is really beautiful is it seems to touch people in the heart. It is written from the heart, and that's a lovely thing.
It really has resonated with people, and obviously, as you mentioned, the Oscar nominations being rewarded that way. 7 Oscar nominations, and you setting a record for the most number of Oscar nominations, 7 for a male in different categories. Yeah. So, did you know that you were in contention for that?
No, you definitely don't join for any of that kind of thing, because that way madness lies, and it's amazing, absolutely amazing to me. But it reminds me of the great privilege you have of being a storyteller from different parts of the kind of creative equation. Whether I act, obviously, but in this I get to direct a beautiful kid who plays in the 9-year-old version of me, if you like, and he's an amazing natural young Jude Hill. And then we've got at the other end of the scale, Dame Judi Dench.
Well, I was going to ask you, I mean, the cast is incredible. We have Ciarán Hinds, Dame Judi Dench, both of whom received Best Supporting Actor nominations. Jamie Dornan, Katrina Balfe, the newcomer Jude Hill, who they say steals every scene. Yeah. I mean, what is that like when you have such an all-star cast?
Well, I mean, when we saw the Screen Actors Guild rewarded them with an ensemble nomination, which for me was the proof of the pudding, that the kind of connective thing between them. The weird side effect of COVID was that family, that on-screen family, became very bonded in their cast bubble immediately because they had no choice but to get on and perhaps form relationships sooner and quicker and more meaningfully. And it comes across. I think the audience always intuit this, and I think that feeling of a real family, an identification with what a lot of families have to deal with in terms of decisions in their own lives, big ones for them, simple when you look at it from the outside, are really caught beautifully by this group of performances. I'm very proud of them.
What an impressive guy. All right, guys, we're just getting started here on our Popstar Plus Oscars preview. Coming up after the break, we're going to dive into our next Best Picture nominee, Licorice Pizza. Welcome back to our Popstar Plus Oscars preview. Alana Hayam made her acting debut in the Oscar-nominated film Licorice Pizza. Here's the conversation that she had with Willie and Jenna about that part.
Since 2007, Alana Hayam has been making music and performing all over the world with her sisters in the Grammy-nominated band Hayam. Now she's making waves in Hollywood, starring in a role that was written just for her.
In fact, believe it or not, it was Alana's acting debut in the Oscar-nominated film Licorice Pizza. Here's a look.
What's your future look like?
I don't know.
How do you like working at Tiny Toes?
I hate working at Tiny Toes.
You should start your own business.
What business should I be in?
I don't know. What do you like?
I don't know.
You're an actress. You should be an actress.
And we could say that to you, Alana. You're an actress. You are an actress.
You guys.
We could say, what a way to make your acting debut. Paul Thomas Anderson says, I wrote a movie for you. I know you've never acted before, but you're going to star in it and effectively carry this movie. What did you think when you heard that?
I was mind blown. I mean, I say it all the time, but I'm a Sagittarius, so like...
Me too.
You're a Sagittarius?
Yes, I'm a Sagittarius.
December 15th.
November 25th.
Oh, you're early Sag.
Yes. I don't know what that means.
No, it's good. It's good. We're all great. We're Sagittarius.
Yeah.
We think that we're the best. But we're like always up for new adventures. So like when he introduced this movie and said, I wrote this part for you, would you want to play Alana? I immediately said yes, and then went to bed and like tried to go to sleep, and then immediately like opened my eyes and was like, oh gosh, what did I get myself into? But it was so fun.
Well, and not only that, but we have Bradley Cooper,
Yes.
when Billy's
Good
BFFs.
man.
We have Sean Penn, and it's a movie that's about where you're from.
Yes.
Which is a place you love. So
Yes,
that must
it kind of feels like we're there right now.
I know, that's the
You guys,
idea.
we're
Yeah.
back in my home. We're back in my home.
Was that also super cool to be able to like show this place that raised you?
Oh yeah, no, I mean I love the Valley. I feel like the Valley gets a bad rep because of the 80s with the Valley Girl, the for sure, and the mall culture. But I mean, which I am that person, and I am proud of it. But I feel like growing up in the Valley, like people thought that you were uncool. So if you're a Valley kid, you're like, okay, if everyone thinks I'm uncool, I'm gonna own it. And I love being uncool. And whenever you find a Valley kid on your travels, you immediately are bonded.
Well, you guys, you and your sisters have been in the music world for a long time, doing incredibly well, and now you're at the center of the Hollywood. You're going to be walking the red carpet at the Oscars, Oscar nominee. So to come right out of the box like this, what has that experience been like for you?
I really hope I don't trip. That's really like what I'm hoping that I don't do. I mean, it's been incredible. I mean, when we were making the movie, we didn't think about anything like that. We were just trying to make something that we loved, and every day we showed up to set so happy. I didn't want to leave, and it was such an incredible experience. I still can't even believe I'm sitting here talking to you guys, talking about Licorice Pizza. I mean, it's wild. It's very wild.
So what about when you were young and you were in the family band, which
Yes.
is kind of my dream for my little children, to create some sort of family band?
You should. Yeah.
Rocking Hayam?
Yes.
So when you just, look, first of all, well, your parents...
Oh my God, that's so embarrassing. That is me and my siblings.
Wow.
Oh my God, Esty, my eldest sister, is going to die that this is on television right now.
You were in this band
Yes.
with your parents,
Yes.
which I wish we had like a group photo.
I know. Oh my God.
Well,
There we
there's
go.
y'all
Oh,
now.
Dad.
But when you decided, like, okay, we're going to actually go out and be huge rock stars on our own, like, I can imagine that conversation sitting at the kitchen table
It was
being
a
like...
lot like this. A lot like this. Me and my siblings sat in 3 chairs. We set up 2 chairs for my parents. No, I mean, I think that with Rockenheim, I mean, I was so young. We were only playing covers. It started when I was 4 years old. We would only play like delis and like country fairs and street fairs. Like it was nothing. It was not the big time. A lot of Billy Joel, a lot of Rolling Stones. It was cool. We were cool. We were terrible, but we were cool. But yeah, in 2007, me and my siblings decided, like, maybe we should play music together because we had been playing for so long, and it worked.
That famous deli circuit in the valley.
Oh yeah, it's a hot
stars.
ticket. We got paid in matzo ball soup. That was like our claim to fame.
Worth it.
Really cool to see Alana acting, not just singing. All right, we've got some great stuff coming up. The Power of the Dog has, count them, 12 nominations. That is the most of any film this year. And we spoke to the film's production designer about just how they were able to create that cool 1920s setting. And we're back continuing our Popstar Plus Oscars preview. Now, if you've seen the Western, The Power of the Dog, you'll recognize the arid Montana landscapes. And we learned from the great Grant Major, that's the film's Oscar-nominated production designer, about all this behind-the-scenes work that was needed to create the look and feel of exactly what you see on screen.
As a production designer, my responsibilities are to create the sort of the time and the place within which the drama takes place. On The Power of the Dog, our story starts in 1925 in the state of Montana. I then have to sort of really cater and tailor everything that I do to bolster the narrative, the storytelling. Power of the Dog is based on a book by Thomas Savage that was written in the 1960s and involves a family of two brothers who run a cattle ranch. We shot in New Zealand, so it was incumbent on us to be able to find a location that would play for Montana. I'm hoping that the New Zealandness of it sort of diminishes somewhat because it's the story set in Montana and we should believe it to be so in Montana. The valley itself, the Ida Valley, was very much a place that time forgot in many ways, because it's quite a long time ago, the 20s, 100 years ago almost. And we're looking for a place that didn't have modern farm buildings and other agricultural accoutrements. So we're very lucky to be able to find this place that was very sort of pared back. It was already a cattle ranch, but it also had a lot of the grasses that we were looking for. I did have to spend a lot of time trying to knock back the greenness of the grass and make it feel more arid, to give it to sort of reduce the colour palette quite a lot, because New Zealand is very green normally. We're also able to use the cattle that was on the ranch, and there's very little else there. We built everything. We built the house, we built the cattle yards, and the barn, and the cowboys' quarters, and all these sorts of other elements of the script. So it was really nice to be able to start with an empty canvas and build everything from the ground up. Jane Campion and I had come across each other 30 years ago there, and I was very impressed by her personal style and professionalism, and we did a lot of workshopping in our own way to be able to talk about our creative process, our way of going about making something real, because we start off with words in a script. We did need to build the house as a 360-degree building. So, we did need to shoot all the way around the building, and we needed to shoot inside the location, front doors and inside the windows. We also built the areas of the kitchen and around what we call the cowboys' dining area, so that they all had a direct relationship to the location that we could see out through the windows. The frames within frames were something that we're really trying to bring in here, because it's something about looking out through the wilderness and looking in through those windows. That the observational kind of aspect of that was kind of a nice sort of sub-theme in a way. Perhaps the most challenging was it wasn't just the sets that we were doing the whole environment. So a lot of the work we did subsequent to building it was all the aging processes, which were just endless amounts of paint washes and texture washes and paring it back and putting in the lichen and the mosses and all that sort of stuff for the outside of the sets. The same goes for the inside sets that we built in the stages in Auckland. Put a lot of work into the patinas of the walls, and just to give them a feeling of an old life here, and a very masculine sort of leathery kind of feel to everything. Believe me, I had a very talented group of scenic artists, and of course the set decorators and the crew were just like so enthusiastic about this film. It was like it has stardust all over it in the beginning. I reckon this thing was like a perfect proportion and a perfect script. A perfect group of people came together to make it. I am so proud to be part of the Power of the Dog phenomenon in a way. That it garnered so many nominations.
It's so interesting to learn about all these processes that are happening behind the scenes to create those cool visuals. We've got a lot more behind the scenes insight to share with you. Sci-fi fan favorite Dune's up for 10 Oscars. One is for the category of cinematography, thanks to nominee Greg Fraser. Here's what he hopes to convey through the lens of his camera.
My greatest goal as a cinematographer generally is to not have people know that I had done a job on the film. So it's a bit of a tricky one because, of course, everything that you see on screen is lensed through my camera and my team's camera. Dune is set many years in the future. It is a time when humans have evolved to the point where they're able to do away with computers effectively. So this is my first film with Denis. The major thing that I took away from my first meeting with Denis was his passion for the material. He read this book when he was a teenager and has stayed with him all those years whilst he's been learning his craft of filmmaking. And the way I approached it was effectively by seeing the world through Denis' eyes. I very much wanted to optimize the emotional quality of the light that we shot. Since becoming a cinematographer, and before that I was a photographer, so effectively I've been studying light now for 20 plus years. I'm very much trying to emotionally tap into what light does for us as humans. So it was trying to run that kind of that line of subtlety, yet the fact that the light really is a character, because you need to make sure that when you're inside the household that you were aware of the fact that you should not be outside. Like that was always a difficult, tricky place to be. So I wanted to make sure that the audience felt that at all the time, or they had at least the underlying feeling that it wasn't always at the fore, but it sort of allowed the backbone of the characters to understand where they were. We always made sure that we were primarily basing our decisions on character, regardless of what those decisions ended up being and who the characters might have been. So we wanted to try and make these characters relatable to the audience. And part of that, I think, is the way that we cover them. You know, we want to make sure that as a camera, we're close to them, but we're not so close with them in their face, or we're not so far back that we're not filming them on longer lenses. Because again, lenses, I think, have an emotional bent too. If the lens is too long, lens is too wide, we start to feel something different. And Denis and I were quite adamant about making sure that our lenses sort of sat within their space, but they weren't too aggressive in being too close to them. We played a lot with scale in this film. You know, these sand dunes that they were, you know, running up and running down. These are sand dunes, for example, in Abu Dhabi that you ordinarily wouldn't see. You wouldn't go to the local beach and see a sand mound that's 17 stories high. And so we wanted to make sure that the audience saw and felt the scale of those things. And that's where I found it exciting visually, putting our characters in the middle of these sand dunes, like they were massive waves that were ready just to consume them. We loosen the camera, I think, by often going handheld. You know, that is a pretty fast way to kind of lead the audience into a belief that the world is a little less rigid. But it also, what that did is it allowed us, when we wanted to do shots that were very controlled, very focused and very steady. You know, what I do hope comes across in this film cinematographically is the relationship with the characters and the characters' relationship with nature. You know, I hope that we've managed to capture the characters as they were intended to be seen by, you know, originally by Frank Herbert and Denis as a director, but also by our actors. You know, I hope that I've done justice to our actors and made them feel like their performances have been properly captured and recorded. You know, winning an Oscar is great if that ever so happens, but to me, I think the biggest thing is the recognition of our individual work on a great big film like Dune is.
Man, those shots in Dune are just epic. Coming up next, we're exploring the makeup and costumes featured at this year's Oscars with two acclaimed designers. Stay with us. And welcome back. You've tuned into our very special Oscars preview. We're going to dive right into some costumes now. There's so many good ones in films that were out. Paul Tazwell is the brains behind the costumes that you see in the new film version of West Side Story. He's nominated for an Oscar for his work. And we spoke to him about what it was like working with the legendary Steven Spielberg on his reimagining of the classic musical.
The way that I approach my work, it's telling the story and being a support of the story from the standpoint of clothing and how the characters might choose their clothing for a specific scene or moment. I see my work as a very powerful part of the creative process for the director, for the actors, and then how it plays with the presentation overall and how the audience engages with it. When I was asked by Steven to design West Side Story, I was very aware that West Side Story, the original Broadway production, was done in 1957. So it was important for Steven to recreate the world of 1957 New York City, then everything that was going on, in that time. The way that I created the contrast of the Caucasian community, as it relates to the Jets, and then the sharp community as it relates to the Latinx community. For the Jets, the film opens up where they are essentially in their playground. So with the Jets, I work to keep them in cool tones and a lot of blues and greens and grays, and some of that was influenced by my use of denim, and thinking about jeans and how American jeans have become actually in our modern culture, versus the Puerto Rican community or the Shards, where they are, they're in more warm tones, and warm tones that, kind of dip into where they've come from, the tropical colors that they've come from. I knew that the purple dress that Rita Moreno wore in the original film, and also Chita Rivera in the original Broadway show, it was going to be important to find a look for Anita, played by Ariana DeBose, that would feel as iconic as that dress could be. So as I was choosing colors, and choosing colors surrounding her, and choosing, patterns that would surround her as well, because there's a lot of floral prints that I used within that as well. Again, to be reflective of the tropical island that they had come from, and that they're even singing about. One of the original things that Steven Spielberg asked me to do when he was asking me to design the show was that he wanted for the white dress for Maria to stay part of the design. I loved that idea because, it speaks to her innocence. It also speaks to culturally to where she's coming from and her connection to the Catholic Church and the potentially feeling oppressed by that, that kind of pressure, where she is, as a young woman, trying to evolve and grow and expand and really be, embrace this new space that she's in. Part of the white dress and that look for Maria is the red belt. And, Steven, again, was very smart in having Anita take the belt off of her outfit that she had planned for the Dance to the Gym, and handing it over to Maria, really as a, it's a metaphor for, kind of ushering her into womanhood and that kind of positive energy, that kind of sisterhood. Been dealing with race issues in America, and it's our most American social battle. So I think that with what has transpired, what all of us have experienced in the last 2 years, definitely it speaks to that, and it speaks to just the question of what does it take to come together. Having a musical that can be filled with joy and positive energy and excitement, and it holds both. West Side Story has these huge numbers, beautiful music, and so I think that we need something that we can embrace and feel good about, and I think that West Side Story provides that.
You can just see the richness and all the attention to detail when you watch that. It's always so cool hearing from people like Paul. All right, now let's turn to another story being told at this year's Oscars. In the film, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Jessica Chastain plays evangelical talk show host Tammy Faye. Now, Linda Dowds is nominated for her makeup design in the film, and she says she worked really hard to portray Tammy Faye as authentically as possible through the makeup that Tammy Faye actually wore, and we know she wore a lot.
As a makeup designer, I think that our key responsibility is to support the performance by an actor. And then I think there's an additional responsibility when you are looking to create a real life character, and that involves a lot of research and trying to be as authentic as possible to the appearance of that person, which was the case of Tammy Faye. Tammy Faye and her husband, Jim Baker, were real-life televangelists, and they had a very large fall from grace.
Tammy and I are undergoing the most vicious attacks.
Serving God don't feel like it should be a money-making opportunity.
And through my research, listening to the old PTL recordings and Tammy herself in all her interviews, and what I discovered was that I really believe I had a misconception of who she was. I found her to be an incredibly empathetic, actually really beautiful human being. She exuded, I think, the real tenets of being a good person. She taught tolerance and acceptance and being authentic to yourself and being the best person that you can be. And that authenticity became super important. And we wanted to convey that. Some of the steps that we went through to portray Tammy Faye as authentically as we could, it was such a team effort. We had Justin Raleigh and his team from Fractured Effects who did the prosthetics. Stephanie Ingram did hair, Mitchell Travers did costume, and then myself doing the beauty side of things. One could not have moved forward properly without the other. So I think that was a really key element. And then Tammy Faye told us a lot about herself in her interviews. And you just had to look at her. She was very well put together. Everything matched and coordinated. She loved shopping at drugstores and Target. She loved pinks. And we had sort of three major stages. So there was a very young stage of Tammy Faye where she was at Bible college, and she created a little bit of a ruffle then because she did wear a little bit of makeup. I think that's where we first saw her love of it. And then we have a period where sort of that middle ground where we see her on the Christian Broadcast Network, we see her on PTL, and there's a lot of color and everything was that true matchy-matchy. We saw the brighter colors. We saw violets and blues and pinks. And then as she grew older and as she hit sort of that last phase, we saw, I think the tones all changed. Everything got a little deeper. They got into plums and purples and deeper tones, and their wigs got darker and her costumes got darker. She was into more reds and blacks. And then of course there's the aging process, which was reflected in the prosthetic pieces. So I think those three stages, we kind of defined those stages very specifically, which also helped us move through the transition of, almost, basically 3.5 decades of what Tammy Faye looked like.
Okay, do you want a little remover? Oh no. That's it. That'd be all. They're permanently lined. Oh. And my eyes are permanently lined and my eyebrows are permanently on, so there's not a whole lot you can do.
My goodness, I didn't know. Have you never done pictures without those eyelashes?
Nope, and I never will, because that's my trademark. And, if I take that away, then it's not me. And no one's going to want to look at me without my trademark, so I hold on to that.
Doing something like this, it does involve a lot of research, and she often talked about some of the brands she used. For example, she used L'Oreal Lash Out. That was her choice of mascara, and she used a lot of drugstore brands. And a lot of those colors, funny enough, particularly those little quads that you see that L'Oreal and Revlon and Maybelline all put out, those colors have pretty much maintained a lot of the same sort of tones. So I bought those. So it only helped show the true look of what it was. So I think that research is super important. So Jessica and I, we have worked together for quite a number of years now. We're currently working on our 16th project together, which is a mini series about George Jones and Tammy Wynette. And I think the lovely thing for us is, I mean, Jess is an amazing collaborator. So for me, I find it really great that she is really supportive of the whole process and recognizes that there are all of these elements that we need to pull together. And she's a really great active participant in the choice making of developing the character. It is a joy to work with somebody who is engaged in what we do and has a love of what we do, you know, that I feel, because I love my job. And so to be honored in this way, like, I actually can't quite believe it. However it all falls, this is brilliant, and I'm really happy with every element of it as it stands right now.
Gosh, the research and planning that goes into each of these films is absolutely remarkable. It's fun to dive behind the scenes here. All right, we've got a lot more to come up for you. Still, we're going to bring you all the potential history-making moments to look for at this year's Oscars. Welcome back to our Popstar Plus Oscars preview. A few winners at this year's ceremony could make history on a lot of different fronts. Here's Turner Classic Movies host Dave Karger breaking down what you might expect.
The Oscars have already made a lot of history this year with the nominations that came out. They can make even more history with the winners at the end of the month. Here's how. First up in the acting categories is something really fun. For the first time ever, there are two couples nominated in all four of the acting categories. So in lead actor and actress, Javier Bardem for being the Ricardos and Penelope Cruz for Parallel Mothers are nominated. And in the supporting categories, Jesse Plemons and Kirsten Dunst, who are co-stars as well in The Power of the Dog, they were both nominated. Married couples have been nominated before at the Oscars, but never in all four acting categories. So that's kind of cool. Also in the Best Actress category, if Kristen Stewart wins Best Actress for her performance as Princess Diana in Spencer, she would be the first person ever to win a lead actor Oscar without being nominated for the SAG Awards or the British Academy or BAFTA Awards. This is majorly significant because there's a lot of overlap between the voting body of the Oscars and the voting body of the SAG and BAFTA Awards. So it's very rare for someone to win an Oscar without also at least getting nominated. It has happened a couple times in the supporting actress category. Marcia Gay Harden won without a SAG or BAFTA nomination. Regina King won without a SAG or BAFTA nomination, but it's never happened in the history of the SAG Awards, which is 27 years, that someone has won a lead acting Oscar without a SAG or BAFTA nomination. In the Best Supporting Actor category, Troy Kotsur from Coda has become the first deaf man ever to be nominated for an Oscar. His co-star in the movie Marlee Matlin was the first deaf actress to be nominated in the 1980s for Children of the Lesser God, and she won Best Actress. So let's see if Troy Kotsur can also win an Oscar for his first nomination. There's also some history that could be made in the Best Supporting Actress category if Ariana DeBose wins for her performance as Anita in West Side Story. First of all, she would be the first openly queer woman of color ever to win an Oscar, so that would be a very exciting moment. If she does win, she will also make it the third time that two actors have won Oscars for playing the same role in two different movies. So Marlon Brando and Robert De Niro both won Oscars for playing Vito Corleone in two different Godfather films. And of course, Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix both won Oscars for playing the Joker in two different films. So if Ariana DeBose wins, it'll be the same role that Rita Moreno won her Oscar for 60 years ago. So that would be a great moment. There's some more history that could be made in the Best Actor category. Will Smith is already the 9th person and the second Black man to be nominated for acting and producing the same film for King Richard. If he wins the Best Actor Oscar, which I think he's going to, he would be the 5th Black actor ever to win the Best Actor Oscar after Sidney Poitier, Denzel Washington, Jamie Foxx, and Forrest Whitaker. There's also a cool statistic in the Best Picture race involving Cate Blanchett, who of course is one of the most acclaimed actors or actresses working today. With the Best Picture nominations for Don't Look Up and Nightmare Alley, Cate Blanchett now surpasses Olivia de Havilland, a great classic actress from films like Gone with the Wind, as the performer who has appeared in the most Best Picture nominees of all time. So it just goes to show that whenever Cate Blanchett makes a film, whether she's actually nominated herself or not, the film always benefits from her participation. There's something really exciting going on in the Best Director category this year. First of all, Steven Spielberg, with his nomination for West Side Story, becomes the first person ever to be nominated for Best Director in 6 consecutive decades. So he got his first director nomination for Close Encounters of the Third Kind back in the 70s. If Spielberg wins the Oscar for West Side Story, he will become the oldest Best Director winner of all time at age 75. Currently, that record is held by Clint Eastwood, who won when he was 74. This year is also a great year for films written and directed by women, particularly in the Best Adapted Screenplay category. That's screenplays that are based on previously published or performed material, like a remake of a film or an adaptation of a book. And this year, for the first time in 30 years, 3 of the 5 scripts that are nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay were written by women. Coda by Sian Heder, The Lost Daughter by Maggie Gyllenhaal, and The Power of the Dog by Jane Campion. And I think Jane Campion is going to win it. There's another thing to look out for in this year's Best Picture race. I think for the first time, we could very well see a Best Picture winner by a streaming service as opposed to a typical Hollywood studio. I think The Power of the Dog stands a really good chance to win, and that's a Netflix movie. No streaming movie has ever won Best Picture yet. A couple have come close, I think, but if Power of the Dog wins, this will be the first time that has ever happened. I know I'll be tuning into the Oscars on March 27th to see all the history that's going to be made. I can't wait.
Well, we're just going to have to wait and see what happens. Now, to close out our preview, coming up next are interviews with Nicole Kidman, Javier Bardem, and Kristen Stewart. We're back here on Popstart Plus with more of our Oscars preview. Nicole Kidman and Javier Bardem transformed into Lucy and Ricky Ricardo for the film Being the Ricardos. Both are nominated for their roles. And our own Chanel Jones sat down with the duo to learn exactly how they prepared to play the TV icons.
I Love Lucy defined the TV sitcom in the 1950s with still iconic scenes like Vitamita Vegemin.
Vitamita Vegemin contains vitamins, meats, vegetables, and minerals.
And of course, Stomping Grapes in Italy, which was recreated in the new film Being the Ricardos.
We only did 3 takes of it, and that was it.
Really?
Yeah, and I was like, I'd spent 2 months preparing it, and it's like, it's gone.
Written and directed by Aaron Sorkin, Being the Ricardos focuses on the behind-the-scenes drama, Lucy and Desi's turbulent marriage, and a crisis that threatens to end their careers.
You're not telling these people that I checked the wrong box.
There were 181 episodes of I Love Lucy. Did you watch all of them, some of them?
I watched all of them in one night.
Just
your face saying, really?
Ricky, this is it.
There are always brilliance in every show. There's always a moment of brilliance.
Brilliance that's daunting to live up to. When news broke of Nicole Kidman's casting, not everyone thought she was right for the role.
There are critics who say, does she look like her? Can she do this? Do you let that give you any space in your head, or?
Try not to, but a human being. So there's times when you go, gosh, maybe I'm not the right person for this. But that's where having somebody like Aaron, who really said at the beginning, he was like, I'm not wanting a perfect rendition or imitation of Lucy. No, 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 no.
Kidman actually felt a special connection to Lucille Ball.
A lot of it I can relate to, and I go, okay, I've been in that situation. I know that. So I think those things are relatable.
You've been...
There's a scene in it where they say, you're 39 and that's it. It's kind of over for you. I know that feeling. I sort of had that. And it was like, okay, where television suddenly opened a door for her, it opened a door for me around the same age. I was like, gosh, that's kind of, I know that feeling really deeply.
Javier Bardem plays Desi Arnaz, the famous Cuban-American band leader whose Congo skills may have been a bit hard to replicate.
You played the Congo so hard, your hand bled at one point. Is that true?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. When you hit it hard, you start to bleed. Yeah, if you are not a conga player.
Are you?
No, I'm not. And you want to make it sound, and then they put a playback. And you say louder, 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 and then you don't hear what you're doing, and then you go like crazy, and then cut. It's like, what's going on?
That was the first act of a new episode right there.
I read that you pursued this role for years. What was it about this role?
And I started to watch the episodes, and I felt immediately drawn into him, like his energy, his skills, his talent, his humor, his way of taking the place, owning the place, in a moment where it was so difficult to be a foreigner in this country.
Kidman and Bardem capture the deep and complicated love between Lucy and Desi, possibly drawing from their own high-profile marriages to Keith Urban and Penelope Cruz.
I think we're both fortunate in the sense of we have partners that understand the artistic process and say, "God, I want you to have that," which I love.
It's a gift to belong to such a great story and such a great movie. So when it happens, it's like, take it.
Great to just get a snapshot into the lives of Lucy and Desi. All right, now last but not least, Kristen Stewart. We caught up with her to chat about her role as Princess Diana in the film Spencer, one that landed her a nomination for Best Actress.
You got an incredible standing ovation when this film Spencer debuted. And you really embody Princess Diana, which I can't even imagine how intimidating that is to take on someone who's so well known. How did you watch The Crown? That was part of the research?
Yeah, I think I watched it in like 3 days, actually. Yeah. It was nice to have that and going through all the memoirs and research and documentaries that actually are not remotely dry. It was just nice to have like a dramatized version of the story it was very clickbaity for me. I just couldn't stop going to the next episode.
How did you go about like nailing the accent, the mannerisms, all of the things that were Princess Diana?
She is not difficult to absorb, to be honest. And I wish that there was a sort of key to this magic trick. My only answer is that I took her into my physicality in a sort of emotional, spiritual way. I'm such a huge, enormous admirer of her, and it's hard to not be impacted by that energy. I just also luckily had a good 4 or 5 months to work with a beautiful coach, and I trust the process. You know, it became really physical and muscular, and then once I got there, it was really important to focus on her spontaneity and her life. And I think every picture I've seen of her, every bit of footage I've seen of her, she is exuding life and just like kind of exploding alive. And so I couldn't make everything perfect and precise. You know, I still needed it to kind of live and breathe and feel unruly. I feel like when she walked in a room, it felt like you didn't know what was going to happen. And that could be projection, sort of maybe our memories of her, and then knowing what happened. There's something about looking back, you know, hindsight is 20/20. Every time I look at her, I'm like, I get a little bit worried.
The film really captures that because there is a certain unpredictability about her. And it's it's a really interesting construct because this isn't supposed to be history. Yes, that scene really happened. It's something poetic. You take 3 days and imagine what those 3 days at Christmas toward the end of their relationship, what that might have been like. Is that what kind of drew you to it, this idea of artistic license based in someone we all know or feel like we know?
Yeah, I think that's what cinema gives us, is a sort of opportunity to dream and not necessarily just sort of regurgitate facts. You know, movies do the coolest thing. They take internal feelings and externalize them. This conversation is like literal, and we're present, we're talking to each other now, but there are inner lives that people have that are incommunicable. And so I think all of the things that we know are true, as a cultural entity, as an audience, we bring all of those facts to the movie. You don't have to state them. I think by the end of the movie, we end on a sort of lighter note because she ultimately did find her liberation, and she broke free and became embodied and articulate in the press and like organized interviews and was like, I'm going to speak for myself and have my boys and protect what really matters to me. And then at the end of the movie, what rushes in is the tragedy of what happened, and you go, oh man, you get to hold her whole life in these 3 days without having to sort of hit the nail on the head. It just feels more emotional.
Boy, it's amazing how movies can just transport you right into somebody else's life. All right, everybody, that was our big Oscars preview. What'd you think? Hold your thoughts there, unless they're good. Popstar Plus comes to a close. We hope you enjoyed it. Maybe you learned a thing or two. And, of course, we're sending a very big good luck wishes to all of this year's nominees, both on camera and behind. We'll see you next time right here on Popstar Plus. Thanks for watching.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals, and so much more with the Today app. Download it now.